Welcome to the bench, a space for conversations that help us uncover our truest self. No mask, no judgment, just love. I'm joined today by my friend Betsy Wecker in Cincinnati. Betsy's the founder of FAQ. And it's kind of crazy how we're actually sitting here. I feel like we've actually only ever hung out like 2 or 3 times in person yet.
I know.
And yet we're like really good friends. It's
Yeah, man.
wonderful.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Just, kindred spirits. I think I know I've already told this to you, but the first time I met you, I was like, it was just so immediate. I was like, I love this guy. He's awesome. So open, so warm. It's cool.
Yeah. The feeling is mutual, Bets.
Thanks.
So tell us a little bit about FAQ, just so people have an idea of like what you're doing and kind of what you're about.
Sure. So FAQ is a safe space for dangerous thinking. I design experiences and tools for curious minds to connect and question more deeply. And so, I started thinking about this a couple of years ago. I always say that FAQ was sort of born out of an existential crisis of me figuring out why the hell am I here? What am I doing? What do I have to offer the world? Because at the time it just felt like, yeah, I have skills, but pretty much anybody can do what I do. I'm not special, but I actually think that everybody's got something unique to offer. It's just a matter of honing in on that, which is a matter of doing deep work on yourself. So in that personal journey of digging into myself and self-archaeology, if you will, I started figuring out like the value I add to others, whether that was in work or in friendship or whatever. And that was this idea that, I offer people perspectives that they hadn't considered because of this ability of mine to sort of take an idea and look at it from all angles without attaching to any one of them. And so yeah, I came up with this idea of FAQ, one, because I wanted to build community. I was tired of, social settings being centered around bars and alcohol and pretty much shallow interactions. I'm really hungry to go deep with people and to go deep quickly. And so initially I was like, okay, I just want to build community, and I also want to help people sort of exercise this ability to see themselves, to see other people, to see ideas in a new light. And so I just started bringing people together and, basically designing experiences that would take people outside of their normal ways of thinking so that they could be open to other ideas. And, part of it was inspired by this modern sort of dilemma of the echo chamber. So like, because of AI, because of social media, we often only access information that reinforces what we already believe. And it creates tribalism, it creates, people who are more fragile ultimately and more defensive, because anything that conflicts with their belief system, which is closely attached to identity, becomes a threat. And lastly, the part of my personal story that is connected to this is that I grew up in the evangelical Christian church. My mom was really the, spiritual leader in our home, and she's an amazing woman, really connects easily with anyone and everyone. It's one of the things I admire about her. She's very warm. But she would lose that ability when she would interact with somebody who disagreed with her, and in terms of her worldview. And I would just see her shut down, and I would see her get really frazzled and not be able to, interact even on a surface level. And all I knew is that didn't feel good, and I didn't want to be that way. But of course, a lot of times kids follow in the path of their parents that their parents have laid out for them until they get an opportunity to step outside of that. That opportunity didn't come for me until I was in college. And then suddenly I started asking myself all these questions that I had never asked before. And yeah, and that led to sort of me falling away from that belief system, that ideology. And it was really scary. It was really lonely. It was a really, you lose your framework, you lose your sense of who you are, you lose your sense of, oh, I know things. Like suddenly I didn't know anything. And yeah, so it was really hard, but then it led to me sort of digging myself out and finding, oh, actually the void is nothing to be scared of. It's something to be, as you mentioned before, in awe of. It's something to lean into. And how arrogant for me to think that I know anything. So anyway, so that's where FAQ came from, sort of identifying my skill set and sort of figuring out where it came from was important to me in that process. And now all I want to do is help other people, get comfortable in discomfort and lean into the questions. Stop looking for the answers. Just start asking more. Like, we're all curious as kids, and that sort of, a lot of the time we lose that because of our parents are triggered by it. You're asking why too much or whatever. School doesn't help. So we have to recultivate that as adults. We have to recultivate that ability to be open. But I think it's really important. So
Yeah, I think what you said there at the end is really the key piece, is that openness, right?
yeah.
Is that just because nobody's born with the beliefs that they have. Nobody's born with the ideas of the world and the frameworks and our personality and all of these ideologies that I think we hold on so tightly to. And what you're working to do with FAQ, as I am as well with Play, Explore, Love, is just giving people a space to not, be so caught in it, I think, right? It's not that you have to get rid of it. It's not that you have to throw all your ideas out the window and, oh, me working with my stuff from childhood means like I can't have any good memories or enjoyment or like,
Exactly.
no, so much of it is informed who I am.
Yes.
Positively and negatively. And it's not a judgment. It's just a let me look at that so that I can get free of the pattern of it and choose for myself how it is I want to interact with the world and how it is I want to make sense of things and what path I go down. And yeah, I think what that really allows us to do is be, as a shirt I wear all the time says, be open to your path and your journey. And for you, it was in college, like there needed to be that openness to that journey. And it sucked, just like for me when I was sitting in California, like it sucked. And there's so much loneliness. And yeah, there's aren't many people around that are doing the same stuff, which is why I think, what we're trying to do with FAQ and Play, Explore, Love, just to create that community of people who say, hey, there's got to be something more than this, like I just don't know where to look and I don't know where to start. And, come on, come on and hang out with us.
Yeah. People are interested. People are hungry for this stuff. And it's really simple stuff, right? It's like getting back to the basics. It's almost like, going back to simpler times and getting people together around a purpose, is, it's simple, but it's so transformational because people want that, but they don't know how to do it. And they want, I think a lot of people just want facilitation. And I think that's, that's where you and I come in, and how lucky us, because it's just fun, it's really a gift. Like I feel like, and I'm sure you feel the same way about Play, Explore, Love. It's like FAQ is as much for me as it is for anybody else. And I get so much joy of just guiding people through conversation and exercises that help them think just a little bit differently, or get them to see another person in a new light. It's like, wow, it opens my world up every time. So
Yeah. And I think that's that's something I've thought a lot about on this this journey for myself, of trying, because you are constantly trying to rebuild your identity, right? You kind of break things down, and then it's, okay, who am I? What do I want to do? And why do I want to do those things? And who am I doing them for, right? I think so long, like, I wanted to be a basketball coach and, get good grades and have a girlfriend and all of these societally accepted or norm things. And it was always for somebody else on some level. It was always this validation, kind of seeking somebody else's validation. Like I heard you say on one of your Instagram TVs the other day, that like your thing was being needed or wanted or like accepted in the space to play with.
Yeah.
My thing is like accepting love, like I struggle with people, like Juliana last night was, like, she was like, gosh, I just love you so fucking, like, I was doing some dance or something in my underwear and just being goofy. And I went to the bathroom and I was just like, there was a part of me that was like doubting it. And then I was like, how interesting that that's still there, how fascinating.
And you have to be, it's so important to be vigilant. I mean, I had, a moment or two recently, where, I fell back into some old patterns of behavior for a moment. And I mean, I'm self-aware enough now to where I catch it. It doesn't go on for very long, but it's like, I think when you get into this work, you can also, your ego sneaks up on you in these really tricky ways where you're like, oh, like, I've been working on myself. I'm like doing all these things. So I'm done operating in that old way. I don't have that operating system anymore, but like, it can still show up, And so you just can never think that you're, well, I've reached some, I've reached some place where I can rest a little bit. And not to say that I can't ever relax, but you just have to know that work is it's always got to be done,
Right. Yeah, no, it's never done. The Buddha talks about, hanging out with Maya forever, for the rest of his life, even after enlightenment. Maya's an illusion, is still hanging around. Because it's always there. The mind is here. We're human, I think and that for me, it's in the Sufi tradition, like we say toward the one united with all, and toward the one being this God ideal, however you define that. And I think that's where the issue really comes in. Like you were talking about growing up in an evangelical Christian home and your mom struggling when people had different ideas. It's like the base idea of love and family and compassion and understanding is there, even if it's in the smallest pocket, right? I mean, even in the like most hateful community, if you look like them, there's that, semblance of love in some way. Right. So I think it's in us all. It's just, we need the space to remember that, and we need the ability to get out of our own way and not be. I think what gets in the way is we get caught in our personality. We get caught in the ideas. We get caught in holding so tightly to these things that we believe, that we can't go if we were just to go a little bit deeper, we'd see, oh, wow, it's not that much different than what they believe. And then we go a step deeper, and then it's, oh, wow, it's actually, well, we're the same, and you manifest like this and I manifest like that, but cool, man, go to the roots and it's all the same. Right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, mysticism, which is what every religion emerges from, this practice of mysticism, which really just means one who, mystic is one who understands that everything is connected and looks for that connection, which I didn't know that was the true definition. I thought mysticism was like woo woo, you know, and woo woo world. And
Well, it can be woo-woo. I think it's
yeah,
just,
I mean,
you know,
you
it's just,
could
it's
take it that
taking,
way.
yeah, I think it's just, it's taking what like, it's because people do take it to a woo-woo level sometimes. I think it's saying, oh, look at me, and I experiment with psychedelics, and I've read all these books, and I've done all of these things, and I have all of these theories of what it is. But I think, yeah, on a deeper level, it's going one step, and how do we make it practical? You know, what
Mm-hmm.
is, as Hazrat and I at Khan said, he's, you know, the wonder of the prophets was not their miracles or their teaching, it was their loving manner. It was the way in which they loved those around them.
Yeah.
And that is so accessible. You know, I think we think that, oh, I need to follow this practice and do these things and go this path and check all these boxes in order to get happiness or get this thing that I am after, when really it's just love. You know, there's
Yeah.
nothing that's like I said the last week with Noah, like everything else is an ice cream cone that melts. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just recently I was like contemplating this idea that like love is not the same thing as attachment. Like those are
Mm.
two separate things that are actually quite antithetical.
And love is not even the same as, like, I think love is this very positive, it gets this very positive connotation.
Right.
Oh, I love you, so I'm not going to say anything bad against you. I'm not going to, you know, I love America, so I can't question her. You know,
Right.
and that's not love. Like, love
Right.
sometimes is saying, hey, like, the way you're acting is harmful and hurtful, not just for me, but for you, because I know that
Right.
it's not like this disharmony that you're causing is because you're confused in some way too. And that doesn't mean that we don't address it, but like,
Yeah.
you can also turn around and look at that and
Well, love is truth, right?
right,
Like,
right,
you know, and that truth isn't easy to accept a lot of the time.
yeah. I think,
Um,
and that's where letting go, learning to really let go of, you know, with Play, Explore, Love, we do, there are 5 things that we work on in the program, and it's, the first is play like a child, then be where you are, it's all okay, know thyself, and then love and light. That's who you are. And it really culminates in 3 things of be, see, and remember.
hmm.
And just, yeah, take, because it's not anything. And I think that's the, for a while for me, I kind of got into the ego trip of being a teacher, was all
Mm.
because I've always been this, right? I mean, from when I was 9, I said I wanted to be president, and then when I was 11, I coached my first basketball game, and then I was coaching when I was 15, and I had my own team when I was 17. Like, I've always been in this space where, like, I'm the teacher and I'm the front of the room, and I'm, you know, and there's always been some, yeah, ego attachment around that, and
Mhm.
working through that of like, it's something that I'm uniquely qualified to do and have a lot of practice in and really enjoy, but also something that I don't, you know, it's not about you trying to be me, you know. I don't want to be up there and just trying to, like, you know, that was my thing with teaching, why I struggled teaching math, was I'm teaching you things that I don't agree with. I'm up here teaching state standards and tests, and like,
Mhm.
you know, I tried to do a unit on, like, using the statistics to look at the war on drugs. And my principal came in and was like, yeah, you can't do that because it doesn't align with the test standards. It's like,
Right.
you know, like, come on, man. What's the point of this? And
Yeah.
so it with Play, Explore, Love has been fun because, you know, like, I'm yeah, I don't think I'm just giving people the words or the tools or the space to remember what's already there. Like, I'm not giving them
Exactly.
anything that's not, that they don't have. I think so much on, I think, you know, there's so many people in this industry of, like, self-help and personal
Mhm.
development and whatnot, that it'll say, you know, follow this roadmap and
Right.
do these things and then you'll be happy, you know, lose this amount of weight. And it's like, it's in here, man. And all of those tools are great. Like if you have dreams of playing college basketball, then go find a basketball trainer that'll help, like it's not that you don't go do those things or enlist people to help you get where you want to go. It's just a level deeper is that, you're already here, and you got to accept that too, and just sit in that, and learn to make your own life your curriculum, right? Like you don't
Right.
need to be somewhere else to learn about yourself and do the work. You don't need to be with some teacher or be in some program. You just need to sit with yourself and look at yourself and just, that's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what I think is most valuable today is like your, your being general, your unique perspective. Like, what is that? Honing in on that. And again, that was my work. It's like, well, I'm unfulfilled. What would make me fulfilled? Well, knowing who the hell I am and knowing what I have to offer the world. If I could figure that out, not that it's you figure it out and you're done. It's constantly evolving and being open to that. But yeah, there's something to sort of, because I think for most people, it's like I don't have like a technical skill set. I don't think most people, it's more nebulous until you sort of have to like really think about it. But yeah, I mean, once I settled, or once I really honed in on mine, it totally freed me and opened me up to this world where I'm like, oh, I don't have to feel imposter syndrome, because, and not that I still occasionally feel that, but I know what it is, and I can identify it, and I can say, how can I be an imposter syndrome and being or how can I be an imposter and being Betsy? Like, I can't. Like, Rob, you can be an imposter if you try to be me, but like, that's not what's going on here, So I don't have to, if that's your framework, or your mental state around the thing, it's like, you don't have to worry about competition. You don't have to worry about somebody else stealing your idea. They can't, because, I'm sure you feel this way with Play, Explore, Love. Like, FAQ is basically just me with a brand around it, and that's what I present to the world. And at times it feels really vulnerable, but then I just remind myself, wait a second, this is what is uniquely valuable about you. This is what people have told you is valuable, and what they take away from their interactions with you. So yeah, people, I think part of what we do, even if we don't say it directly, is we help people discover those things about themselves. And that's really powerful.
Yeah. And it's such a, like, I just love, you know, yeah, I think there is this joy almost in watching other people succeed, right? There's this
Oh
joy
yeah.
in watching other people just become themselves. Like, in my relationship with Juliana, like, she's grown so much, and you know, obviously a lot of that has to do with the relationship that we've been in, but she's not growing like me. She's coming into her own beautiful manifestation of that, and then we just bounce off each other, and it continues to be dynamic. And I think that's really what, that because when you sit where we sit, it's this makes so much sense. Like, yeah,
Right.
the world
Right.
is all connected. Why not live from that space? But it's, on the other side of it, but it's, that's so different than
Mm.
what I believe or what I've known to be true. And there is this acceptance, and like I said last week, this letting go of who you think you're gonna be. Like when you were in
Mhm.
college, you probably didn't think that you were gonna be doing FAQ,
No.
but the things that you were learning there influenced it. It just,
Mhm.
you had to be open to where it went. It was the same thing for Play, Explore, Love for me. And Yes, I think it really just starts in this acceptance. And I think to people who are debating whether or not this is the right thing to do, and should I really sit with myself, and should I open myself up to this pain, you know we all have faith in something, right? Like, I had faith that if I went to college and I got a good job and I got a good girlfriend and I made an impact, then I would be happy. And I did all of those things and I followed that path,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't happy,
Mm.
and it was okay. So then, do I continue to just put that faith in somebody else's roadmap, or do I just sit in this stuff and maybe sit with the pain a little bit and see what I look like, and what is it that I really want, and what does my ideal look like? And then what can I do right now in this moment to move a little bit closer to it, right? It's not who I'm going to be at 40, I imagine, is incredibly different than who I am at 27. I hope that it is. I hope that at 40 I'm not doing the same thing. Even if I'm still in the same space, I hope that I'm doing it differently, because the world is dynamic and growing and moving, and why stop moving with it?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, so just to back up, I left, you know this, but I left the 9 to 5 world in April. So I've been self-employed since then. And I'm still realizing what a monumental paradigm shift that is when you leave, oh, I get paid every 2 weeks. And just from like a budgeting perspective, like you can't budget the same way. You don't spend money. When I get a check now, it's like, whoa, I earned every dollar of this, which makes it harder to spend. And it's just like this very interesting thing. But also, even though I never considered myself part of like the rat race, I realized that had infiltrated my psyche more than I like gave it credit for. So for a while, I would have these moments, almost like PTSD, where I would be like, "Oh my God, I'm supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to be, climbing some ladder. Or I should have this role, or I should be like." And then I would realize I was thinking that way, and I would be like, "Wait a second, I'm not part of that world anymore." Like I don't have to. And I would calm myself down, soothe myself, and it would be fine. But it was really funny. Like for a while that was happening kind of, it was like, uh, aftershocks, if you will. And yeah, but I feel like living this way, not knocking anybody who works a quote unquote normal job, but it just feels a little more honest, when it almost feels like you're back in the hunter gatherer days. Like you got to go out and get that piece of meat, nobody's going to get it for you. And it feels like I'm more in contact with life, because I have to just be more conscious about everything. I'm not going to the same place every day, except, I wake up in my bed usually. So
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I think what it is that you have the space to create in your own
Hmm.
way. I think some people, like, that work in more of a like 9 to 5 traditional space and have the ability to create in their own way and then shut it off. Awesome. But I think the problem with so much of the like accepted work world, especially amongst young people, is like, yeah, working 50, 60 hours a week is totally, that's how you do things. Like you get
Yeah.
ahead, and it's like, I mean, maybe like, but why? I think just stopping to ask, like, why,
Right.
like I feel the same thing with you about kind of getting over and letting go of these old frameworks, because I think the same thing. Like I'm launching this 6-week online program in the new year,
Mm.
and I'm like thinking about, oh, how many signups am I going to get, and how much money am I going to make on it, and how do I price it, and what's this, like, and then trying to figure out, because freelancing too, like, how am I going to eat, what's the, and like all of these like old ways of thinking about it. and I just, yeah, earlier today I was just sitting there and reframing it for myself, and I was just like, you're doing what you love to do, you know,
Yeah.
like you're sharing something that is true and yours, and like, what else could you do, you know, like what,
Right.
like at this moment in your life, is there something else you would rather be doing? And the answer is no. So then it's like, who gives a fuck? Like,
Right.
whatever happens with it, who cares? You know, it'll hit when it hits, or it won't. Like,
Mhm.
you know, and then you just readjust, or you don't. But it all. I think the difference is it becomes your journey. I think the moment that you say, okay, I'm just gonna sit with myself, and I'm gonna do, like you said the other day, the work. Like, you become the captain of the ship again, I think, right? It's
Mm.
like we allow our life to just kind of be directed by the frameworks and the personality and the things we're taught when we're kids, that we then never really uh analyze, or like look at, or get free of, and then it just continues to be this cycle. uh and once you start to, I think it's really just, you start to see it, and you just make the commitment to be with it, and
Yeah.
it's all okay, and I'm just gonna, where else can you go, right? I mean, you can run from this thing forever, and I think it really goes back to, we were talking earlier about like death, and this idea of like, you know, thinking that you like acting like you're already dead, or, and that's the ultimate one, right? I mean, that's the ultimate fear, is I'm going to die, and we can never run from that.
Mm.
So like, if we can't run from the ultimate one, why run from the little ones, you know? Like, we might as well,
Right.
you know, if nothing else, we're at least practicing.
Right. Yeah. I think Tim Ferriss has like a famous TED talk, maybe about like fear setting or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm talking about. So it's like, instead of saying, well, what am I scared of? Like, what am I so afraid of happening? You know, if I do this thing, think about like, well, what do I have to lose if I don't do it? Which is for you and I, if we didn't pursue these things, I think there would be a profound, that sense of failure would be way worse than if I, you know, invest a little bit of money in a few months or a few years into something and it doesn't end up taking off, you know? That to me, you know, not doing it is way worse than doing it and maybe it's, you know, it
Well, I
doesn't,
think,
you know.
yeah, and there's a decision either way, right? There's an action
Sure.
either
Yeah.
way. I think we assume, oh, like inaction is just me waiting, but like, that is also an action too, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
choosing to put something off. And sometimes it, like, I remember I, about 3 years ago, had an idea right before I left for California, right before I was going to do this, like a lot, really commit to doing a lot of work on myself. Um, and I had this idea for like a basketball program, like wrote a whole business plan, was talking to people about it, like was workshopping the idea, and was starting to get really excited about it. And then I just stopped, and I looked at myself in the mirror and said, that's still an external solution to an internal problem. Like, you got to go sit with your shit. Like, that's
Mm-hmm.
not it. And so like, it wasn't the right, it's not, you know, part of doing this work is, oh, I got to go create something and do my own thing and build, like, sometimes it's just, no, yo, I got to go, and I got to sit, like, I need to just go, you know, be in this space and just reflect, and you know, then build something when you feel more secure in what it is you want to do.
Yeah.
uh but the thing with Tim Ferriss's fear setting, I've used that a lot actually, because fear is a big thing for me. I get really anxious, especially like speaking in front of people, and um, not so much anymore, but definitely used to. And one of the things I started doing was with fear setting, of like saying, what's the worst case scenario? Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Uh, and then if I'm okay with that, what do I have to lose here? Like,
Yeah.
let's do it. You know,
Yeah.
I was at a, so I was telling you a story about this shirt earlier, and there's another story that lines up with it. Um, and I think I actually did a podcast on the story about this shirt at some point. I'll have to patch that in here somewhere. But so I went to a gay bar in Austin, Texas, with some
Mhm.
friends a couple years ago, and we were in there, and this drag queen comes up to us, and she's like, hey, we're doing a show. She comes up to me and my friend. She's like, we're doing a show, and we need two more guys to get on stage and do like a striptease, just down to your underwear. like we're just doing a competition. And I'm like, no way. Like, not because I'm cool in the gay bar. I'm just like, I don't like dancing in front of people and take my clothes off and like, oh man, like no way. Like get on stage in front of strangers. Ah. And my friend's like, dude, you should totally do it. And I'm like, why don't you do it? He's like, no, I'm not doing it either. I'm like, oh, well, you hypocrite. Like, you can't tell me to do it. You not do it. But then I started thinking about it a little bit. And, you know, at the time, the way I was really making sense of play, explore, and love was that I play enthusiastically, I explore courageously, and I love unconditionally. And so I started sitting there and I was like, all right, you say you explore courageously. Why won't you do this? You know, well, oh, shit, I'm afraid that I'm going to get laughed at or I'm going to be embarrassed. And well, is that likely going to happen? No, probably not. It's like some amateur thing at a bar. And B, if it does happen, are you going to be okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you know, let's do it. It's just dancing. My friend's like, it's just dancing. Let's get, you know, okay, I'll do it. So I get on stage. There's 6 of us. We get up on stage and and they go down the line and they dance. I'm like the 4th one or whatever. I get out, I'm whipping my hair around and, you know, take my clothes off. They end up announcing the final 3 and I'm one of the final 3.
Oh, wow.
And then they announce the 3rd place person and it's not me. So I'm like, oh, I'm in the final 2. Awesome. Yeah. And then they say, all right, we're about to announce the winner. But before we do, we've got a birthday boy in the house. And they bring this guy up on stage and they sit him down in a chair. And I'm looking at my friend like, you said this is just going to be dancing. Like, what's going on? In my mind, of course, because I'm on stage still. And then they're like, all right, they blindfold the guy. And they're like, the 2 finalists, 30-second blindfolded lap dance. And the birthday boy is going to decide who wins.
Oh, my God.
And I'm just like, oh my God, man. Like first, I thought it was just going to be dancing. Second, now I'm on stage. Like I can't, you know, I guess
it's
I
never just dancing.
But I couldn't get off at that point. So anyway.
So keep going.
Yeah, so anyway. So I saw the other guy. The other guy dancing. He was like moving his body. Like I was like, oh my gosh, like no way can I compete with that. Because also like I am definitely the only straight dude on the stage.
Yeah.
Like I'm wearing, to give you an idea of like, they're all wearing like designer underwear. One dude's got like a G-string on. Some dude's wearing like a unicorn onesie. I've got some like tattered Fruit of the Loom, like boxer briefs with some like
that was gonna be my next question.
Like some calf high, like red and blue Argyle dress socks. Like I mean, like the most like straight white dude on the stage ever. And so I watched this guy dance before me on the birthday boy, and I'm like, I can't compete with that. But I know that guys like getting their thigh rubbed. So I'm just going to like kind of move my body and just rub his thigh for like 30 seconds and maybe that'll win. And no shit, I won.
All about that thigh rub, Rob.
All about that thigh rub.
Wow.
You know, ladies, if you're listening, or men with boyfriends, if you're listening, thigh rub.
That's hilarious. Wow.
Explore courageously, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that for sure. I mean, yeah, like that's the thing. You've got to, especially if you're going to be leading something like that, you really got to be practicing what you preach, huh?
And I think it's not like, I think, you know, in the past, I would have done something like that, like, hey, look at me. You know, I would have been kind of like a look at me doing this thing, draw the attention. Like for example, when I was in college, I lit my face on fire because I tried to drink a flaming shot of whiskey that we were debating if you could light alcohol, and it lit for a while. And I was like, you know, somebody's got to drink it. And then I was like, I'll do it because I
might as well be me.
Might as well be me. You know, I'm in the party. I want to be the center of attention. Woo, look at me. You know, like this wasn't that, right? I think it was a genuine, okay, this is a moment.
It's like an exercise.
Right. This is the moment that I'm presented with in my life where I get to decide whether or not I'm going to practice the things that I ideologically and theoretically believe.
Yeah.
And if I chose not to, cool. I get to look at that and, oh man, you know, I wasn't ready today. Okay. That's
Yeah.
okay too. You know, I'll
Yeah.
get it tomorrow or I'll get it the next day. I think that's like, you know, that courage isn't, you know, courage isn't just showing up in that moment. Courage is sometimes, you know, saying, ah, shit, you know what? I didn't show up. I
Yeah.
got, you know, I'll show up tomorrow. Right. I think it's
Yeah.
recognizing that too.
Yeah. I mean, every moment can be an opportunity, and I'm finding myself do the same. It's funny. This is kind of related. I took a few friends on like a group psychedelic kind of guided experience. This was a couple months back, and they were all new to that world. Anyway, so we took LSD, and my one friend, as we were all kind of coming up, he said this thing that we all kind of laughed at first, and then we were like, actually, it's kind of true. He said this phrase, self-inquiry through the eyes of another. And we're like, that's an oxymoron. How can you do self-inquiry by listening to what somebody else tells you? But for example, a lot of people now, when they hear about FAQ or they participate, like last weekend, I led an FAQ experience, and as it was for a women's kind of community group, and as they're coming in, they're like, "Oh, are you going to be standing over there to speak, or where are you going to be speaking?" And that's how they were like, "Oh, you're," and lots of people have been like asking, like, "Oh, like about my speaking," you know, which I'm like, well, I facilitate, and yeah, like I talk and I have to give my spiel and sort of frame the whole thing and create a container, but I don't think of myself as a speaker. But then I keep sort of being given these opportunities to have a platform, which I'm like, like I'm like I've been a little bit wary of in the past, but like every time I'm given the opportunity to share and to be vulnerable and to just offer my perspective, somehow like something of value is created there. And so, I mean, I could easily be like, no, I'm not a speaker, you know, that's not what I am. But these people are telling me, hey, you're a speaker. We want to hear you speak. I'm like, what? Why? You know, but then, yeah, I mean, it's like, why wouldn't I? Yeah, that feels uncertain. That feels like, you know, I've done a few speaking things in the past, like with my job or whatever, but you know, it feels like shaky ground. Like that's not my expert. Like I'm not an expert in that or whatever it might be, but it's like, well, no, here's an opportunity, so do it. Man, and it's just so freeing every time. I have another question for you. Do you see what you do with Play, Explore, Love? Do you see it as art?
I see Play, Explore, Love as a practice. I see myself as an artist. And I think those who practice Play, Explore, Love, I would define as artists too. I mean, I think our life is art, you know, our
Yeah.
life is a creation. It's just, are we on autopilot in that creation, or are we taking control of that creation? And I think part of taking control of that creation also is surrendering the parts of it that we don't have control over, and just, you know, accepting that, hey, you're in a spot to be a speaker because you're a speaker, and I'm in a spot to teach because I'm a teacher. And it's like we just play I think there's this reluctance, I know I've felt it, to like accept my role, because there's, you know, it's always somebody else's role, you know, it's always somebody else's thing. Well, no, but they're the speaker, you know, they're the teacher, they're hosting this thing, and it's, you know, but I can too. And there's a wonderful anecdote in the Alchemist, where Santiago is in the oasis, and he's been like experimenting with the soul of the world. Yeah, you know, he's been like doing the work. He's been like yeah, doing the things that you and I have been doing to explore with ourselves. And then he watches these hawks fight, and he has this vision that the oasis is going to be attacked. And this is
Mm.
like the first time this has happened for him, right? He's been like starting to feel it, but like this is like the moment, right? It's like, oh, whoa, I could do this. And he runs over to the camel driver and he says, hey, I just saw this vision. Like, we need to tell somebody. And the camel guy's like, you got to go tell him, go to the tent and tell him. And Santiago's like, no, but they have people that do that. Like, they have people who read the fortunes and read the omens and like do that for them. And the camel driver says, yes, they do. And today that person is you.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that was like my friend who said that phrase, self-inquiry through the eyes of another. Yes, like, I mean, you've got to be introspective, you've got to dig into yourself, but it can be helpful to listen to other people, like what they perceive in you. I mean, so I've been given so many gifts from people I don't even know that well, when they just notice something that maybe I wanted somebody to notice in me, or that I didn't even know about myself. When they said it, I'm like, wow, yeah, like I guess that is true. Or maybe even if it's not, if it's something that like maybe then you just start growing into it. Like somebody recently said they appreciated my adventurous spirit, and for a number of reasons, I don't I didn't consider myself that. Like, in fact, in the past, I've been sort of a serious planner, but when they said that, it helped me think of myself in this new way of like, yeah, I mean, I'm certainly an adventurous thinker, so yeah, that makes sense. And then it just, again, opens up the world a little bit more.
Well, I think that's really the benefit of community, is that other people
Yeah.
reflect back to us, right? We're doing this internal work, but then, there needs to be some reflection back of, is this practical? Does this like,
Mhm.
that's been one of the, real joys of Juliana and I's relationship, is that like, we've both been constantly growing throughout and, adjusting and dynamic. And it's okay, now you're like this. Oh, wow. Okay. What does that do for me? And now I'm like this. And okay, what does that do for you? And it's just
Yeah.
this constant ebb and flow. And uh, like, you notice certain things that other people say because of where you are in your life too.
Mhm.
And I think these things feel new because they aren't yet a part of our like framework of what our
Mhm.
personality is. But think of how much is part of our framework now that at some point wasn't,
Right.
part of the framework. And so it's just continuing to, I think that's really, like Jesus says in the Bible, like, unless you become like little children, you won't inherit the
Mhm.
kingdom of heaven. And it's just be like a child as an adult. Not you have to act childish or like be, ignorant or and like whatever, but just that you are open and playful and exploring in the way that a child does. uh,
Yeah.
because then life is always this new thing, it's always this magical new moment that we're coming into.
How do you, so I think, for me, like you use the word play a lot, and so I'm wondering, like, how do you play? Because sometimes I think I definitely, like, I get joy in a lot of areas of my life, but sometimes I'm like, I don't know that I'm actually playing though. Like, what does that really mean for me? So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I think it's just, the way I like to define play is thinking about like a child on a playground
Yeah.
and how they're just completely in and present with and, you know non-judgmental of what it is that they're doing. I think that can like,
Totally.
that can be a physical thing. That can be like, I like to go shoot hoops in the morning or do yoga or do different things, but like, some of it is playing with your mind, some of it is having conversations, some of it is
Right.
just this action of being present with whatever you are with. um I think it's, yeah, for me it's just really just the idea of holding things in a certain way It's just not too serious. It's just kind of, I'm playing with this thing right now, and I
Yeah,
might play with this thing for 40 years, or I might play with this thing for 2 seconds and say, hey, no, I don't like it. But it's all this, yeah, this
I
constant
love that.
messiness with it.
Yeah, that feeling of just being enraptured by something, and nothing can sort of break your concentration because you're just so mesmerized by whatever it is. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think
Well, then I definitely play, but I think my
absolutely.
play is just like human connection, and just like every day I try to have a conversation over coffee with somebody different every day. And that's just my favorite. I just feel like giddy about it.
Yeah.
So I guess that's play, right?
Yeah, totally. You're just, yeah, you're playing with other people, you know. I think it's just, we have to, I think, before we can do any of the work,
Mm-hmm.
like, it starts in just this being where we are. Like, it starts in this acceptance that, okay, right where I am is where I'm supposed to be, and what I'm doing is okay. And
Yeah.
tomorrow it might be different because I choose to get a little bit better, or it might be the same. And then, you know, it's not this, I think this and then it happens. It takes time.
Right.
And each day we get a little bit closer. You know, I get a little bit closer to aligning with my ideal. Uh,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that's
It's
really
about,
all it is. That's all we're
yeah.
doing.
It's about not being rigid.
Right.
It's when when you build a house that's like got a stone foundation. This is actually, you all know Harari. He's this brilliant
Yeah.
Israeli historian, wrote Homo Deus and Sapiens, and he's like talks about like what will be useful in terms of education skill set moving forward as AI becomes like a bigger and bigger force in the world. And he's like, we used to build um, you know, big brick houses with deep stone foundations. But that's a very rigid, you know, that's a very rigid framework versus today, if you have a tent is flexible, it can be picked up, it can be moved around. And, if it's windy, it moves with the wind and whatever else. So yeah, it's like going back to, my childhood and having family members who had these really rigid worldviews, these very narrow worldviews. Like something comes, it's the littlest thing can come up against that and just break, either if it doesn't break it, it just makes it, um, just makes things harder. And being flexible and being able to and willing to adapt and change your mind constantly is, yeah, it's a really positive thing.
I like to think about it like, do you remember those, when we were kids, like those wood boards that have the different shape cutouts, and you can
Yes.
like put the circle and the square and the triangle and wherever. And I, like, when we're children, we have all of the spaces, like all of the shapes are open, and we're constantly learning new shapes. And but then adults, as we grow up, we generally, it's like, oh, we just see circles and squares. And then when triangles start to come, it's, either throw them out or they got to change, right? That's where the
Mhm.
rigidity comes up. And so then as kids, we are this full board hanging out with a bunch of people that really just see circles and squares. And so then what do we learn? Well, we learn that circles and squares are what are valued. And I don't
Right.
actually need to look at the other things anymore.
Right.
And what we do in adulthood, I think, is not learning anything new. Re it's just remembering and reopening up that board and saying, oh, whoa, you know what? Like, triangles are actually okay too. I
Hmm.
like circles because I've been around circles my whole life, but like, triangles are okay too, and I can learn
Right.
stuff from that too. And
Right.
I can just enjoy time there. It's like, yeah, it's there's this fear, and it's really just certainty, right? Going back to what we talked about in the beginning, it's people choose certainty and wanting to know what is going to happen, and this, like, yeah, this idea. And I get that. It makes sense. I understand why we cling to
Sure.
the mind in that way. But it's just, if we go a step beyond it, it's like, what I did really was, can you ever find security in that? Like, that's what that was the mental thing I did, like the fear setting kind of. One thing I like to do is I like to follow thoughts, like, all the way down to the end. And so I was sitting there and I was a teacher and I had a very secure life and my, you know, my frameworks were good, you know, everything was good, exactly how I thought. And I followed that down and I said, okay, if you stay where you are right now and you never sit with these things, like you never go into this pain, you never challenge this uncertainty, you just stay in this. I was in a different relationship at the time. You just stay in the relationship you're in, stay in the job. 40 years from now, you're going to be happy.
Mm.
And the answer was no. The answer wasn't necessarily no, but the answer wasn't unequivocally yes. You know, the answer wasn't like, yes, absolutely,
Right.
I will be. And so, cool, man, I got to go. Like
Yeah.
there's something to find. There's clearly something to find out then. And, you know, thank you all of these experiences for turning the light on that, for allowing me to experience these things, get here, and then feel,
Mhm.
hey, you know what? You know,
Well, and the thing is, like, at the end of the day, safety, security is always a delusion. You know, like,
right.
you can think you have a secure job, and then next thing you know, something shifts in the market, your company goes under, or whatever. Anything can happen. I could get hit by a car right now. And yeah, like, we want to ignore the fact that life means we're tiptoeing on the edge of oblivion all the time. Um, and look, I get it. To an extent, we have to have delusion in order to maintain like some semblance of sanity.
Right.
Um,
We gotta acknowledge each other's spacesuits in some
yeah,
Ram Dass
yeah,
style.
we've all got them, and that's fine. But like, but but don't let this idea of security hold you back from what you really want, because it's probably not as secure as you think anyway. Especially now, especially, you know, as again, like, you know, AI is revolutionizing everything. And so you've just got to start thinking really differently about, you know, like, security is just not, that notion is going away. So what are you going to do about it? And I get that that's scary. Freedom isn't, you know, is not a comfortable place. It comes with responsibility, and it comes with, yeah, like really making conscious decisions about, like, what do I really want.
Right.
So
And you're the sole author of that, right? I used to live on doing just enough to do it well, but always not too well that if I failed, I would have an excuse. You know, I tried, it was always just enough. There was always this, oh, well, you know, if I'd started a little earlier. When you're working on yourself, there's nowhere to hide. There's no deadline. There's no like, oh man, yeah, well, I would have turned that paper in. It's you either sit with your shit or you don't, right? Like there's no middle way of doing it.
yeah,
And I think that's just very different. And there's no, you know, there really is no roadmap to it, which is really what I'm trying to create with Play, Explore, Love, and you know, help other people with this practice. Is like, it's a compass for a wicked world. It's a compass for this ever-changing constant that we live in, and you just set the intention to play with it, to, you know, to be with it, to explore it and see what is, and then just, you know, be love and remember that that's what it's all about anyway. Like, we don't need to prioritize power or success or security or all of these things. Doesn't mean we don't want them or accept them when they come, but it's like there's something more, you know. And
yeah,
if those things aren't coming as just a natural manifestation of us being who we are, then they're not going to be fulfilling anyway. So like,
totally.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, we're you know, we're talking about the same thing, just slightly different, nuanced approaches. I mean, there's a certain element of childlike um, play, if you will, on what I'm trying to do with FAQ, because it's about, you know, returning that to that time of curiosity, like infinite curiosity, when everything was a mystery. And
And
it,
everything still is a
it
mystery, right?
is.
I mean, like,
Everything still
there
is.
is never, there's no way we could know everything there is to know in this world, no
Exactly.
matter how many books we ever read for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, there's a great Buddhist koan that says, I think I may have mentioned this to you one time. It's like, once a child learns that a bird is a bird, they'll never see another bird again. And it's just this idea that, like, even by naming something, we start to conceptualize it, and it loses some of that magic that it had when it's just like, what is this thing in the sky? Flapping its things, you know, like.
The one I love, the one that, if you want something, if you want to test this out at home, next time you're outside, go find a tree and just look at the tree.
Oh,
Like, right?
God. Yeah.
I mean, like the bark and the leaves and the little, you start looking at it, you see the little ants crawling on it. I mean, there is
The
so
whole
much
world.
going on
The whole universe.
that we just drive past and say, oh, it's a tree, you know, and
Totally.
how much of our lives do we do that with? Oh, it's just a thing. I know what that is already. I've named it. It's, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then we just keep it moving, and it's, yeah, we lose the dynamism, right? We lose the life.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell one last psychedelic story. So on that trip I mentioned, that the one where I was kind of guiding, I took like a half dose because I wanted them to know I was there with them, but you know, it was a small dose. But you know, we were at this house that was kind of surrounded by woods, and then the Ohio River like runs right by it. So I started by like walking along the tree line, and I zeroed in on this like little orange bug. And once I zeroed in on this little orange bug on this leaf, I noticed like, oh my God, there are a million like little creatures all around me. And I just stood there staring in wonder for probably, I don't know. You never know, because there's that time warp thing that happens. And then I wandered over to the river, and I sat on the bank, and I kind of laid on the ground and just looked up toward the sky. And I was getting to sort of the height of the experience. And right when I hit that place, I don't know if it was a hawk or a falcon, some large winged bird of prey, like appears out of nowhere, dives straight down into the water, looks like it was fully submerged, comes up with a giant fish, and then just like disappears into the sky. And I'm looking around, I'm like, nobody else was there. Everybody else was in their own little zone. And I was like, I think that just happened for me, you know? But it was like, I know that happens in nature. I know that birds go and they dive into the water, but God bless it. Like, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that, like, you know, in the Christian tradition I was raised in, it's like, well, you know, that bird was created by God and the fish is there. So the bird, you know, like, I don't know. It's just wondrous. It doesn't matter like how it all came to be. It doesn't matter if that plant and that bug was created by some omnipotent being, or it doesn't matter how it came about. It just matters. It just does. And that's enough. So yeah, it's, the tree thing is real. I've got a big oak tree in my backyard. I give it hugs regularly.
I think we really it's just this, we've allowed us, I mean, really like colonization, right? I mean, there have been tribes and indigenous people living on this planet forever with this connection to the earth.
Yeah.
And this, you know, I went to Tibet a couple years ago, and they're still yak farming, and they're outside, and I mean, like, and we've just I think in the American society that we live in, have just gotten so away from like this connection with oneness and being and nature. And we don't have to do that. Like, the powers that be continue to tell us that's what we should do, and like prioritize the money and the success and the wealth and the job and all this shit. But like, you know, yeah, like you can't say to somebody else, oh man, look how great my life is because I did LSD and I watched a fucking osprey grab a salmon out of the water. You know, like, you can't put that on a resume. So we just say, oh, it's not worth it. But man, what a moment to make you just feel a part of this
I'll remember it forever.
You know, and it's, yeah, how much we miss those moments because we just don't slow down, because we're busy trying to get there that we aren't here, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, cool. Well, Betsy, I like ending these podcasts with the question, what is one thing that you would tell people? If you could just share one thing, what would be the one thing you would share with other people?
Ooh, one thing. Um, I don't want to say this is a word of advice. It's just a thought that I find helpful to return to, which is that my triggers are my responsibility, and conversely, your triggers are your responsibility. So just that often the things that cause us to bristle, or the things that cause us to withdraw, or want to get away from somebody else, are the things we need to explore, and we need to uh, get a better understanding of in ourselves. Typically, there's some pain there. Where there's a trigger, usually pain. So your triggers are your responsibility.
I love it. Thanks so much for being on the show, Betsy. It was so wonderful.
Thanks, Rob. That was fun. I mean,
Having
it's
you.
just like a regular conversation.
Yeah, that's the fun. I mean, that's what's fun about it is it really is like just trying to create this space where we can just talk, because this is what like I that was a big ego trip for me. I think part of this realization was that I'm not special in this. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm here and I'm the one on the mic and I'm the one who, started Play Explore Love and put that on paper and like, but I'm not the first person to talk about that idea. I'm not the only person to talk about that idea, right? You're just saying it in different words.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly not the first, only, or last person to live out this idea, right? Like I wasn't always somebody who accepted things as they were and lived from my own intuition and my own heart and my own path and my like, and I know you weren't either. Like it was
Right.
something that we learned and not even learned, but we unlearned the things that got in the way of it. uh Not because like we have something that other people don't, but just because we sat with it and chose to do the work. And I think what's really beautiful about it is that, if that's true for us, it's true for everybody.
Exactly.
And what a wonderful world it would be if we all just, you know,
Did
started to
it.
do it.
Yeah. I mean, Play Explore Love is you, right? Like it's basically you trying to share your perspective um, that you've honed, and that you've put yourself in the crucible of your pain and all the stuff, and you've come out on the other side, and you're like, you want to help other people do the same, and I'm
Right.
doing my thing through my lens, and that's all we can do.
That's it. Hey, we crossed the river and, we're coming back with a boat, like
Yeah,
come with us.
exactly.
Because
Come
if
over
we all
here.
get, as long as there's more of us over here than over there, we could really do some,
You
beautiful
just
things and create a
do some
society
good.
where we do love and live, and just, who Betsy is can just manifest as who Betsy is, and who I am can manifest as who I am. And it's not, so confined by the societal, oh, you have to be a circle and a square. You can be who you
Well,
are.
yeah, it's about who we are, and not what we do, and not what we have. It's just who we are, and that's what's most important.
That's
So
it.
cool.
Cool.
Namaste.
Namaste.